About goal attainment today.
Hey guys, I'm here with Kevin Brunacini and Erin Murrell, and we're going to talk a little bit about weight maintenance. So you guys probably remember Erin from doing a short-term process where she did a photo shoot with Shannon, but some of you might not know Kevin's entire story, so I'm gonna let him talk a little bit first. But Kevin is the Diet Doc owner of Southern Cincinnati, Independence, Kentucky. And before he came to us, which has been at least 3 or 4 years ago, right? He had gone through a little bit of a personal journey on his own to lose weight, and it's quite substantial. So Kevin, tell us a little bit about how that went.
Sure thing. Say it'd be about 11 years ago, about this time, I peaked at about 276 pounds. That put me, based on my
276.
Yeah.
Okay.
5'10" frame. Based on those variables, that put me as a class 2 obese, which is second highest. Nearly 40% body fat.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, that's not, for being in the medical field, that's not something that I can be proud or emulate in order to teach my patients to live better. So that was my catalyst to change. So
a little bit of backstory. You were in college at the time.
Yeah, undergrad, yeah.
Okay, and you're now a nurse practitioner.
Yep.
Working on a PhD in the same field. And so just being in college, what made you even think then, like, this is just not right?
It came down to a personal value of not being a hypocrite, not wanting to be a hypocrite. No one's going to trust me as a clinician if I can't live healthy and preach what I teach when I know that patients ought to be doing the same, or if I'm educating them and I can't practice it, it's going to be a hard time to develop that trust and rapport with them to take me seriously and have credibility.
And how was your childhood? Were you always heavy and athletic? What was that like?
I wasn't heavy until I started working in restaurants back in late high school. Up until then, I was I wouldn't say I was an ectomorph at all, but I was very skinny, scrawny, active. It just eventually caught up with me even though I stayed active throughout high school, it just was simply eating too much, enjoying it.
So started gaining when you were in high school, continued through college.
Yep.
And then you said one of the factors was just, I'm going into healthcare and I don't want to look like this, I don't want to be that hypocrite, but what kind of personal dialogue was going on?
It's hard to remember at this moment. I can't say. There's a lot of variables at that time. I had just failed out of the nursing program, and so there's a lot of personal transition for me, just of education, but worth of am I cut out to succeed? Mm-hmm. And as tried as it may be, I'm going to have to focus myself in order to succeed on these other more outward expressions of myself, like school and everything else. So I focused on myself when that involved exercise and nutrition, and just making those healthy steps of how to live healthier and lose weights in a sustainable method. Even though I yo-yoed, I cliched, I did things that weren't appropriate or even logical, but it didn't stop me nonetheless, despite the yo-yos that occurred over a 4-year period of losing 121 pounds.
And I don't want to connect dots that aren't there, but you said you were having difficulty in school and you had gained this weight. I mean, do you feel those things are two sides of the same coin? Just you weren't happy with life in general? Was it just physical, like, hey, I just love eating pizza and so I'm gaining this weight, or were you just at a point where you said everything has to change?
I enjoy food. I was in typical college where I was 18, I'm invincible, I'll worry about when I'm 50 type of thing. But I went through when I had issues with school and when I was experiencing, there was personal stuff, but it wasn't. And I wouldn't say I was emotionally eating to smother any emotions. Not that I can remember, although I'm sure I did to some degree. But I don't recall that being a trigger to blossom.
Okay.
Out of control. I was
so just physical. I just gained 120 pounds. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
How long did you lose the weight over what course of time?
It took 4 years ultimately to finally achieve the goal that, or at least lose the goal, or meet the goal that I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I think I yo-yoed in between that time period maybe 4 or 5 times where I lost, I think the most I lost, I got to 190 from 276 and went back to 230, which was my highest rebound. I still, 30 pounds ahead of the game, but nevertheless, even for somebody who's sustained and maintained for 6+ years, it's still, up to that point, I still had trouble of finding that permanence and sustainable actions to practice what I am now. But
this is a part of the story I wasn't familiar with as many times as we've talked. And since we're talking about sustaining your progress, sustaining your weight loss, take us through those 4 years, because somebody could lose 120 pounds in a year or so. Did you intentionally take that long, or was it like every time you started, gung-ho, I'm going to do this, and then you just didn't?
Pretty much that. The first round, I'll say I lost 30 pounds was spring of 2006. Wow. And I think I did something like a Weight Watchers, kind of backstory. Obviously, I knew of Dr. Joe, and that's, your teaching is how I ultimately have gotten here just by even though I never went through a program, the teaching nonetheless and being out there was how I applied things. But nutritionally, I still did things I just didn't know better because it was just cliche. But like Weight Watchers type of program set up, I followed that. It was successful just by basic portion control, nothing magical to it. And
were you tracking food through that period? Every time you lost.
No.
So you're just trying to eat less, do something that you thought was healthy.
And it was I remember buying the Weight Watcher meals at that time in college and doing clinical. That was probably contextually the best thing at the moment, just to maintain some type of structure. And it did well. That took me up until I graduated. I maintained around 230ish, we'll say. And up until graduating in 2009, I moved out of Evansville and back, to northern Kentucky. And at that point, I was like, all right, 230 is the new baseline. Things are solidified, more structured, or the structure of my life. Let's move on to the next phase of whatever I want to do. And at that time, 175 was the end game goal for me. So got a trainer for the first time as far as professionally, and nutrition. That was the first time I started logging. So that was 2009, and nothing magical to it, just simply logging, just being accountable. No magic numbers or macronutrient percentages.
You didn't have a goal. You didn't say this is how much protein, carb, and fat I need, or how much
okay. Not at that point. I wasn't too familiar.
So more for just self-awareness, just science. I'm eating this, and here's the result, and so I'm going to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, and the large thing is, and funny to see how it's all come together. Unbeknownst to me at the time was, I'm starting work at the hospital. It's going to be inconsistent, long hours. So what foods can I eat that are practical, quick, easy, that I can eat or drink at times on the go to get me through, so I have that structure to get me through a long day at the hospital. And it wasn't the most glamorous meals. It was very boring at times, but for that context, it got me through ultimately to I got to 190 by the start of 2010, we'll say. And maintain
which is pretty lean for you. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you would be a pretty lean guy walking down the street at one point.
It was noticeable, that's for sure. I mean, 276 to 190, that's a pretty substantial difference, and people notice, and I did too.
Now you're a much more muscular 175, 180 typically, maybe a little bit lower.
Yeah, obviously, troughed down to 155. I went up and down to between 190, 230 from 2010, 2012, I'll say, working in the hospital, getting married, things that just occur in life. I yo-yoed, we all have that, I suppose, but...
what kept you coming back? Once you reached a low and then you gained some back, what made you stay in the game and keep trying?
So that credibility, that value to me is huge. obviously still never left the hospital scene. Well, at that time, I was still in the hospital, so patients still saw me as that, I have to provide that trust and credibility to them, even I still now, but I felt it was more personal towards me. I had that as professional value and personal, but that's not going to change. I want to maintain that, but as I was now getting married or was married, it became more personal. I wanted to have competence. I wanted to, my wife saw me at my heaviest, and she never judged me for it. That's why I married her, but to see her, to want to live better for her, for us, for longevity, it's all the tried answers, but I wanted it for myself.
One last question in this segment, because I didn't anticipate this, it's great stuff. How much of your going back those 4 times was objective, saying, gosh, I've gained weight back, I've got to start again, and how much was, gosh, dang it, I failed again, and I'm a loser, and I've got to get this weight off? Like, kind of the emotional, angry, stressed out side versus just, hey, I got to do it again.
I've really never thought about it until now. I never beat myself up about it.
Good.
Which...
It's unusual.
Yeah, considering everything else I do, I usually would. But that it bothered me, but I never, I was never disappointed. I felt perhaps other people were disappointed, but it's like I've done it before, I can do it again, but my mindset and how I practice and preach in medicine is what's preventable, what can we prevent and sustain in the long run rather than just do something transiently only to have that risk of going back to old behaviors or some issue. And that was one game going into primary care medicine. That whole philosophy really kind of was hammered into me. And once I started my master's, and at this time I was 215-ish, I was at home, I was working, just to focus on schools online, my environment was controlled. So that, I remember first of the year, 2012. Yeah, 2012, I was like, there's no excuse now, and here I am now, I've stayed in sustainability.
That's something we'll come back to in a few minutes, because, for us discussing sustainability, you've done it, and it didn't travel just a linear path of losing weight and staying there. I always fear with clients, because it's so common, that once they lose a substantial amount of weight, somebody loses 50, 100, 150 pounds, it's almost invariable that they will gain something back. And I just find more often than not that it takes kind of the second time. It's like, okay, you've done it, you're excited, it's great, then you realize you're not infallible, and it takes a little bit more of a long-term effort. So maybe Erin, you talk about that in, first of all, your clinical work, and then I want to talk about your story a little bit. Do you see that in clients that you help lose weight long-term, that it just never follows a utopic path?
Yes, I do. I've noticed though, it's the ones who have never dieted before that usually they end up having a backslide after a while, and they come back a couple months later and say, I need help again. Some of the ones who have done diets before, whether it was like with me or some other form of diet, sometimes they, they've gone through that process, like you said, where they gain it back and then they lose it again. So they're really committed at that time.
And at the Diet Doc, we teach that is the most important step. At the very beginning, when you're doing an initial consultation, you're starting with the end in mind. And so whether somebody's doing a 12-week program or a 12-month program, we always discuss, this is the transition process we're going to take. We're going to do an exit interview, and whether you have all of your goals accomplished or not, we still want to be part of that process and transition. But it's still just that hard for people. It is just so difficult for them to go from losing weight, I know what I'm doing, I'm a machine, to now I just can do whatever I want, there's no real accountability. How do I manage this? So what strategies do you use kind of through that transition process?
One thing I do is just ask them to reflect on how they felt mentally and physically when they had done all this work and gotten to a space where they were happy. I think that's a really powerful reminder. Sometimes looking at photos of themselves before and after, I think, is a helpful visual. You don't always realize until you actually look at a picture of yourself, I think, and you're like, wow, I was a lot heavier then. So I think that can be a helpful spot for them to know where they are.
anything objective, like when you say, okay, this is what it took us programming-wise, food-wise to get to your goal. Now here's how you can approach this. I mean, I imagine everybody being different socially, food preference-wise, things like that, metabolically, that you can have a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you lost all this weight without even a lot of structure. So, you know, we can do things many different ways. What are the processes you take your client through to say, pick one of these, or here's a different array?
So what I do, and I do this for myself as well, is the two big things are, one, continue to weigh yourself. I prefer daily, but if not, you know, maybe every 3 or 4 days. Continue to track your food, at least in your mind, and if you need more structure, then write it down in an app so you can remember it. Those are the two biggest things that I think are really tangible. And then the third, which is more challenging, is just staying more self-aware. Like yesterday, all of our families were out to eat at the farmer's market, and some people were ready for lunch. And I could have eaten. It had been 3 hours since I'd had breakfast, but I asked myself, am I really hungry right now? And I wasn't. So I didn't get anything. I had a couple bites of my son's food, and I was okay.
So I like that. Just like not feeling constrained to social pressure, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
For both of you, I mean, to remain healthy and lean, you obviously eat a good portion of food that's just healthy food. And there has to be kind of a core value of, you know, I'm not just trying to stay at this weight, but I do want to be as healthy as possible. So when you're selecting food, you're deciding what to make for breakfast, lunch, dinner, that kind of thing, like what's that process? How much indulgence do you allow? And then how much time do you put into focusing on just eating, I don't know, maybe bland food, or maybe it's not bland? Tell me how you eat.
For me, I have at least 2 very structured meals a day, and then usually dinner is fairly structured as well. Breakfast and lunch. Breakfast is the same every day because I love it and it's quick and easy. Lunch is usually some form of salad with last night's leftover protein. And then dinner is whatever I want to cook, but it's not very indulgent. And then I'll allow for some snacking, either like a pre or post workout snack, or sometimes at night some Halo Top. So, you know, I'm like 85% structured.
Sounds like a horrible way to live.
It's amazing.
You eat this just healthy food. It's going to be tragically boring.
Not at all. You had my cooking. It's good. You didn't get my chili.
You know I'm kidding. Yeah. So it just takes
flavor it. You don't
it just takes a little time of preparation. It's not like you know, I'm not necessarily a big fan of cooking and all that. So I like to just go in the kitchen, whatever I can grab, I eat. So you could say that my way of eating is tragic.
Yes.
Of course. Erin said, was it yesterday or the day before, like, I eat like an obese person, but just in moderation.
Yes.
It's not entirely true. But, is that even true at all? Like, why do you say that?
You were going to order the burger with the donut bun.
You told me to!
Out.
You told me to!
I would say, what?
Because we went to that place just for that reason. That's
we did.
indulgent food. Go ahead.
No, I think, you know, when I look at your food selections, you don't necessarily choose like a bad breakfast, and your lunch is the same every day, but maybe it's just whenever we're out to dinner. You know?
But, and the reason I ask that, jokingly of course, is it is true that I eat more for convenience, but just like Erin, I have a lot of structure. You know, my morning is a pre-workout snack that's the same every day virtually. My post-workout is the same, a shake, you know, blended with frozen fruit. My lunch is the same every day. So I like what you said about, you know, structure. You know, here you are, very seasoned, I don't want to say dieters, you're healthy people, you're nutrition consultants, and yet you're not out just free for all eating what you want, you know, if it fits. You're actually still relying on some structure for a reason. It's just helpful, right? Mm-hmm. So as we talked about, it's about structured flexibility, not structure versus flexibility. So how about you, Kevin? What's your day like with food?
It's boring, it's monotonous. I enjoy it nevertheless, but breakfast is the same for probably 10 years. It's oatmeal, peanut butter. That on every
Protein powder?
And protein powder,
Yeah.
That I'll never get tired of. Take that to the grave. Lunch is pretty similar. Right now it's a rotation of deli meats and veggies, but it's a protein, fibrous type of carb. Based on, that's pretty much the gist of it. If I need more food, then I'll add in more protein or a starchy carb to sustain. But dinner is my biggest meal. Not much to it. It's protein and starch. So pasta and meat, for example, that's usually my go-to, and some type of dressing or some condiment to fluff it up. And including fruit or veggie, and usually veggie. And dinner or post-dinner, that's usually my indulgence, if you want to call it that, and that's my ice cream. Halo Top is the current trend. Has been for some time, but that's my thing. Or it could be cereal if I want to, but it's not really too much flexible. There's not much flexibility when it's my time, I suppose, because I enjoy the meals. If I don't like it, then I rotate it, or I get tired of it, I'll rotate accordingly. But when people are out or come to visit, I'll just swap out my dinner and make that more flexible. But leading up to it is a little more structured. Just to.
So one of the things you guys said, which I like, is you're relying on some structure. So if I'm watching this and I've lost 75 pounds and I'm really struggling to maintain, I'm trying to find that path of sustainability, there is a part that has to be pretty mundane. In other words, you're not going to be rocking in the kitchen for an hour before every meal like you're on MasterChef. You just kind of rely on that. So food as fuel, like that's one component. But again, I like to talk about the complexity of people. It's not one way or the other. It's not that you're either losing or gaining, you're eating whatever you want, or you're hating life. It's like, it's okay. Like, I like these meals. I've selected them, of course. But I maintain some consistency because that just helps with the order of things. I know what calorie base I have. So I know with the National Weight Control Registry and other studies, a lot of the biggest common denominators are people do weigh often. Number one is they track their food. In some way, there's journaling, there's some kind of self-reporting accountability. I don't see this often in literature. I don't even know if it's studied that people who do maintain a certain amount of structure, they'll study things like, well, one of the top 5 is, they eat breakfast every day, or it's a healthy breakfast, things like that. But to say, we maintain some kind of pattern of regular healthy eating, do you tell your clients that? Like, you have to stick to this in some way to make it easier for yourself, or do you just say, yeah, whatever, you'll figure it out?
No, I absolutely tell them, just because you've reached your goal and you might be done with me, you can't go back to your old ways. You'll see it come back. And sometimes they'll stick with it, and sometimes they're back to you in 6 months because they've gained the weight back. But, I think, like you said, just staying conscious of it and self-reporting is so helpful. So I really try to drill that into my clients, well in advance of the end of our program. So they go into their maintenance phase with that mindset of, I've got to keep working. I don't just get to stop. So.
And speaking of studying, Kevin, you're about ready to enter the dissertation phase of your doctoral program. And I think because for all of us in this industry, and you personally having lost 120 pounds, we do have to focus on sustainability with clients and with ourselves. And so you are going to probably work on something that is a tool where clinicians would do these things to start their work with a client, as far as, here are our objectives, here's how we're going to teach to those objectives and goals, and here's how we're going to assess that at the end. So tell me, without going through it all, we don't want to give too much leading into what you're doing, but just why do you think that is important, and what are your goals in doing that?
I should prepare for this one. Certainly, the reason why I find it most important is it's one thing to just say we're going to teach or we're going to help you achieve some goal, and that transition nonetheless from active weight loss to maintenance is critical and often neglected or not covered at all in any diet program, as far as I know, other than what we do, because we understand the value of a sustainable there's no point in doing something if it has a risk of coming back. Why would we even do something if we know it's just going to put us back at stage 1? But we endure it nonetheless. But when it comes to weight, it's obviously that's what separates us, is we have that focus. We're not waiting until the end to then discuss, but we're practicing those behaviors now, because when you transition out of weight loss, nothing should change other than how much you want to eat. But those basic underlying skills of, whether it's nutrition related, support related, and competence related, we have to discuss those and build upon those where an individual is, in order to, for them to flourish well after the fact, empower them, just like primary care. That's what it means to me, is to give patients, inform them what is best for them health-wise, and make the best decision and carry it forward so that they're living their health the way they want, rather than us dictating, here's your medication, here's somebody later in 10 minutes. It's
a lifestyle change.
They have to, well, hopefully they should do it, or want to do it for themselves, but they don't have the behaviors to understand why they're doing it. There's no purpose to it. There's no incentive.
So this is tremendous, because we all focus first on the mechanics of nutrition. Here's how we're going to teach you to eat, and we just eat this, and it is, bioenergy. It's physics to a degree, where calories in, calories out. But for it to be sustainable, you're talking about not just you as the clinician having some of these concepts in mind of competence and autonomy and all of that, but you're teaching them that. And I know this was Dr. Corey Probst, our wellness director at the Diet Doc. This was the entire premise of her dissertation as well, which is, you have to teach people to address these other factors surrounding nutrition, which is probably why I even started with this question when we started this interview. So how do you as a clinician, and you, Erin, bring people up to an awareness of it, where it's just beyond food? It's what's happening in your head.
Behaviors, thoughts drive our behavior, behaviors drive our actions. Even if you have the best plan, whether it's nutrition or saving money, family, marriage, whatever plan you have, if you don't have anything to maintain, or when you achieve a goal, you don't have anything after the fact to maintain those results and whatever you're wanting to achieve. But without, I kind of lost my train of thought.
Well, I was going to say, it's, when you have that client in front of you and you know these things, you know what your goal is for them, how do you say to a client who's just kind of cruising along and they're doing great, how do you intervene and say, here are some things we need to think about? Or maybe they're struggling, maybe they're a client who's not doing well, and it's not just the food, the diet. There's, like you said, there's a thought, a behavior that's making that more difficult for them. So how do you say, well, these are things we need to consider besides just the food?
Analyze their social surroundings, what their environment is, work demands, whatever stressors that are existing for an individual. And it could certainly be related to health, nutrition components, but oftentimes it's something unrelated to nutrition, or not going to say health necessarily, but there's something going on that's fogging, that's taking their attention away, which is affecting their nutrition or consistency for nutrition to meet the health goal that we are striving for. We can't deny what's going on mentally, I'll say, as an umbrella term, because we're missing the boat. That's going to drive further behaviors. And if it's not in the context of a nutrition goal, then oftentimes that's where trouble occurs for the vast population. There's chaos. They're just going through the motions and without any regard to a health goal.
So Erin, do you ever feel like you have the authority or the ability with your clients to say, hey, I've noticed these inconsistencies, or you're struggling, what else is happening in your life? Like your most primary relationship, how's that going? Or are you having stress with work or kids? Do you pointedly ask those questions?
I do. I'll say, how are you feeling? Not just physically, but, are there things going on? And sometimes you'll get a cue if you haven't heard from a client for, like, maybe they check in at least once a week and maybe 2 weeks went by. So you think something's going on, and I'll reach out to them and I'll just say, have you had a change in your life? Is everything okay? And a lot of times we'll end up talking about personal issues and it turns into like a therapy session. We don't even discuss nutrition, but just talking about that and addressing that problem gets them back on track again.
Do you feel you have success in helping them link those two things where it's, because a lot of people just say, yeah, I had a bad week, I'm just going to toss that and start over because X, Y, Z happened. But can you bring them to a point where they say, yeah, you know, that's actually kind of a pattern with me. Like I don't do well with those situations and it does affect not only my eating, but other things I don't like. So, you know, not that we're all licensed mental health therapists, but there are things, because it's so integral, that I think we need to bring to their attention. So how do you do that if you really feel like that's what this person needs more than anything?
Well, it depends on the client. You have some who are really sort of in a negative mindset, and it might take several months of asking them, you know, to be cognizant of how they feel and whether their emotions are dictating their food choices. And then you have some clients who are more open and they immediately realize, oh my gosh, I never thought about the fact that every time I get off the phone with my mom, I go and eat a box of cookies because I'm so stressed out. Sometimes they just have to make that connection and they realize, okay, I'm just using food as a Band-Aid. So I think it's just repeated practice. It takes a lot of time to develop a new behavior change.
And it's interesting to me because just kind of quickly scanning through our conversation, which is pretty impromptu, I mean, we have talked about the mechanics of nutrition, and now we're talking about the psychology and the emotional side of it, and you just can't ignore one or the other. I mean, they both have to work together. And even, you know, I was down at Paul Ravella's Pro Physique camp a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, and interestingly, you know, a lot of the topics he had people speak about, even myself, I totally thought he was going to have me, you know, talk about nutrition, that kind of thing. And he's like, no, Joe, I'd rather you talk about the psychology of eating. And I think more and more in our culture, people are seeing that, maybe just because of the influence of research and so forth. But we're kind of lucky in our company because we have Corey Probst, who is a health psychologist, and I consider her kind of the tip of the spear in our company. And maybe that's because I just take for granted that our nutrition programming, the science is all very concrete and has been there, you know, for more than 20 years. And so now this is where I think society needs the most help. But you guys as clinicians, you do have a unique... Okay guys, we got cut off there with some tech stuff, but we're going to try and wrap this up. And where I was going with that is we as a company at the Diet Doc, we have, you know, a health psychologist, Dr. Probst. We have myself, we have, you know, two kind of co-medical directors, we have a dietetics director. Within our base of program owners, we have pharmacists, nurse practitioners. I couldn't imagine trying to help people clinically without that kind of support as a professional, and for our clients to dig in and have that support as well. And part of this is little semi-rants about how easy it is to call yourself a nutrition consultant or coach out there and quite literally be hurting people. I mean, probably doing more damage than good. So kind of wrapping up this series on sustainability, how do you know, when you're launching somebody to be independent and you're helping them through that transition, how do you end up saying, you know, you need still a good bridge of support? You need to be able to reach out to somebody, whether it's a healthcare team or myself with some kind of a maintenance program. How much do you see connection as a part of their ultimate success?
I think it's huge. I always tell them, feel free to reach out to me anytime. You don't have to still be paying me as your consultant. If you're struggling and we need to chat, please do.
You just want them to reach out.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of them are in the Diet Doc community on Facebook, so they're still sort of friends and engaged, and so they can still keep up with recipes and see other people's successes to help keep themselves motivated. And I think it's just a matter of staying conscious of your goals.
Yeah. How would you cover?
Aside from, I agree with what you've said, and I do the same probably to a fault where past clients will reach out to quite literally for anything, and I'm flattered to see that I'm still a part of them, even if it's not in a formal sense. But connection is just, it's so trite, but it's critical. I don't know if there is a more important value of the three between autonomy and competence. The connection is huge. I say everything to Andrea. My parents were planting the seed for you, for just the content. It all has driven its way towards some other value as well, but without that support to maintain, persist, or want to do it, I feel I'm smart, but I still couldn't do it without support. Mm-hmm. It's critical.
So Kevin Brunacini, the owner of the Diet Doc in Independence, Kentucky, which is just south of Cincinnati, you've lost 120 pounds, and you kept it off for well more than 5 years, mm-hmm. which is statistically kind of an anomaly, because the current research, as you were sharing with me, is that about 85% of people after 5 years mm-hmm. regain all of their weight. So you are in that 15% who is maintaining your weight. So the one thing, if you could say, this is exactly what you need to focus on, and I like to talk about complexity, so I'm kind of putting you in this false dichotomy of one thing, but if the biggest thing, what would you say you have to do to at least start toward sustainable success?
Could I do
two? Go ahead, 2, 3, whatever. Just the hierarchy.
The hierarchy, most important is why are you doing it? What is that incentive you're doing it? The internalization of whatever goal, even if it is some external initially, we have to transform that into some internal regulator of, long-term, something that we may not be able to have tangible contact with, but we have to do it for some value-based reason, and otherwise you meet the goal, okay, then what's your big deal? What's the next step now where you don't have it, you can't physically touch it,
So explain it to me a little more. The way I say this often is you have to think about or realize who you want to be. And you at 276 pounds versus 160 pounds or so, do you feel you are a different person, or that physical side of you is just not happy here? So what is your biggest internal regulator, as you said, to say, I'm just staying here? You said it was because you're a health professional, you don't want to be a hypocrite. I think it's deeper than that. I think you personally have to have something that says, this is what I want it.
If it goes down to those three values, credibility may be a facade to one of the three, but it comes down to competence. I should know better, to know what's healthy and to practice behaviors that we know to be best and healthy, yet I wasn't. And competence is hugely valuable, as the education demonstrates that, and having failed out, that's certainly another validation of I want to be excellent, I want to be great at who I am and what I am and how I present myself.
I'm glad you answered like that, because it's pretty stark to say maybe me wanting to do this for my professional credibility is a little bit of a facade for who I just want to be internally. I think they can both exist. I mean, certainly you get a great deal of satisfaction being a healthy nutrition consultant and nurse practitioner. But there's always something inside that you have to personally hang on to. So Erin Murrell, owner of the Diet Doc Nashville and partner in the Diet Doc lifestyle, have you ever had to go through a weight loss struggle, or what's the most you've ever lost to be where you are now?
I wouldn't ever say that I have struggled in terms of being obese. I'm 5'5", and I think the heaviest I've ever been is 135, 136. I've gone through a couple weight loss phases. I was never a competitor, but just for the purpose of photo shoots, I would go through a contest prep. And I've been on both sides of the coin, where you have your photo shoot and then you just go back to your old habits, and I see how you can just easily put that weight back on if you don't stay focused. And then I've been on the other side of the coin, where I decided I'm happy here and I want to maintain, or maybe just gain back 2 or 3 pounds above that photo shoot weight and then maintain. So one of my strategies is I do look at pictures of myself then and now, and I can say like I'm clearly a much healthier weight at like 125 than I was at 135. And then I just ask how I feel. You know, do I feel like I'm more athletic and sleeping better and my clothes feel better when I'm in the 120s as opposed to the 130s? And I just remind myself of that, and that helps me maintain.
Awesome, awesome. All right, guys, well, we'll wrap it up. I'm Joe Klemczewski, founder of the Diet Doc, and again, Kevin Brunacini from Independence, Kentucky, owner of the Diet Doc program there. Erin Murrell, owner of the Diet Doc Nashville. Appreciate you guys being with us. Kind of a long segment here, but I think it's going to be very worthwhile for everybody to just think about and consider sustainable weight loss strategies and why it's so difficult. If 85% of people regain weight they lost, gosh, we need to be better at that. And when I started this company, that was my driving thing. I owned a gym, and we were doing personal training, and as a physical therapist, we were kind of creating kind of a health program or a wellness corporation, so to speak. And I started seeing those statistics, and at the time I saw some studies that were like almost a 98%, 99% rate of failure. Maybe it was quantified a little differently, but that drove me to wanting to fix that, to say we can do better. What is the failure if that is such a dire stat? And I came down to, you know, we don't give enough education, we don't teach people enough about nutrition, and then it really was about flexibility. You know, we can't give people rigid structure and just expect that to work, so that's where I integrated all of what's now known as flexible dieting and so forth into our industry. But I think this third wave is really about the support. And as our wellness director, Dr. Probst, talks about, she loves self-determination theory as a psychological model. Kevin has referred to it several times here. Autonomy, which is the freedom to make your own decisions and so forth and feel supported in that. Two is competence, which is to feel like you're doing something extremely worthwhile, you're living with a purpose, there's a reason that's internal as well as community or collectively important to you. And then three is support. And I think that's why our success rate at the Diet Doc is so high, is we have personal clinicians who are this invested in people. And I can't thank you guys enough, because you guys are what makes this rock. So thank you guys again. Thank you. And keep watching our YouTube channel. We'll keep throwing out some great content for you. Thank you guys very much.